Are we live yet? I think we are. We are live, I believe. I never trust this thing, so I have to look on my phone. But we're just getting started, so one person tuning in. If you're here, we will get into this Q&A in a minute. If you have a question, please type it into the chat. I can already hear my computer overheating. All right. Do I hear volume? You can already hear my computer. Yep. All right. Awesome. So, welcome all one person to this YouTube Live. It's been a long time since I did one of these, actually. I think the last one was in July. So, like 4 or 5 months or so. And I think back then that I had like 70 subscribers or something like that. And every time I do one of these live videos, like 2 or 3 people would show up and nobody would ever say anything. And it was all right. But my dream is that I'll do one of these live calls and a bunch of people will tune in and we can hang out and we can talk about marketing and business or whatever, and that people will come and ask questions. You know, like back when I was getting started in marketing and, you know, trying to market my own remodeling company, I didn't know anything and I had to like look all over the internet to piece together things. And there's so much bad information, and maybe not like bad information per se, but there's so, like, the internet changes so quick and it has changed so much, you know, over the last 10 years that things that worked really well before maybe don't work that well right now. And so what was once good info is now not so good. And really, like, throughout my marketing career, it's been a series of like starting with a whole bunch of things and then cutting things out and narrowing it down to like a really simple strategy that works. And at the core of it, you know, all it is like getting found by people who are looking for your services. You know, when it comes to getting leads for contractors or remodelers or whatever, if people can find you and you look professional and you're able to be reached, you're available, then you'll get people contacting you. It's really that simple. And the marketing industry as a whole likes to make it sound like it's super complicated, or that you have to, you know, go through their gatekeeper to get customers, or you have to try this fad or that fad. And like a lot of things can work, but at its most core level, like you just want to be found on Google. Like 90+% of people are using Google. So I see a couple people in here now. Please type your questions into the chat, comments. If you watched a video and you think I said something that was not true, type it in the chat. Let's talk about it. There's been a few of those lately, and I like getting those. I like it when people, you know, challenge me and make me prove that this stuff's true and help me get better at explaining it. Because the way I look at it is the things that we do for marketing is really common sense stuff. And it's like if I explain it long enough, or if somebody understands it well enough, then they know that it's true because it just makes sense. And so that's what I aim to help you guys and gals do, is just make sense of all this stuff. And whatever stage you're at, like figure out, you know, what exactly, where you're at and what you're trying to do and how you might be able to do that. So I don't see any questions yet, which was expected. So I do have some questions that I collected. And so we'll just start going into those. If you have questions or comments, like throw them in the chat. I'll read through them. I'll answer all of them. And also, if you want to, like, let me know what kind of business you're in, or, you know, maybe like a certain situation you find yourself in, I might be able to talk about that and, you know, help you figure some stuff out. So let's see, what would be a fun question to answer? I mean, this is a good one. So is having a website really necessary? This whole fuss about digital marketing seems to be overly hyped up. So, I mean, is a website really necessary? It depends, right? Like if you are getting so many customers from your yard signs or referrals or whatever, and you don't need it, then I guess you don't need a website. If you're struggling to get customers and you're looking for ways to do it, a website's a really good way to do it. And it's also a good way to help you sell your products or services. You know, like take remodeling, for example. You need some way to put your work out there. If somebody sees the name of your company, they're going to think, okay, I'll go to their website and look at their work. And if they can't do that, if they can't find your site or they go there and there's nothing there, then their path to you kind of stops there. So, you know, there's a lot of reasons why people have websites. But the main one, you know, in regards to the things I talk about is, well, there's two things. One is the people. The people need to understand who you are, what you do, see pictures of your work, you know, understand who you are. But then Google, the main way Google understands your business is through your website. So if you don't have one, you're going to have a really hard time getting Google to help you at all. I do know one person who got a Google business listing, like on Google Maps, and they didn't have a website, and they were getting calls in like the first 2 weeks. And this was like the middle of last year, and I think still to this day he doesn't have a website, and he still gets a few calls a month. And he's just a one-man band, so you know he's more than happy to just get a few calls. He does a lot of work for other contractors as well, so you know, it can happen. But you know, if you're asking, is a website necessary, you should probably just do some more research and figure out if it's necessary for you, because I can't really answer that for you. Here's one. You talk about appearing on Google to promote oneself. How does that work when we live in a small studio? Doesn't that look less professional compared to showing up as a shop or a business in town? So great question. When you use like a Google Maps listing, Google My Business, you don't have to show your actual address. You can choose to show a service area, and then people can't see that you're living in a studio. So that's not really an issue. There has been debates in the past whether or not it's beneficial to have your address visible versus not. And Google did an update, I think it was like the middle of last year, that seemed to have evened the odds a little bit. Meaning, it doesn't really matter if your address is visible or not. It just doesn't seem to matter anymore. Let's see if we can find one real quick, and I'll show you what it looks like. So if we do like let's do like a remodel, I guess. Let's see if we can find one that doesn't have an address visible. Yeah, so here's one right here. Areas served, Coeur d'Alene and nearby areas. Like, it's not showing these guys on the map, so you don't really have to worry about that. What other questions you got? Let's see. Go back to my list. Oh, okay. What's the difference between Google Business Listing and SEO? Okay, so a Google Business Listing is this thing right here. Like this little listing. I call it a Google Maps listing, but Google calls it Google My Business. This is your GMB, Google My Business listing. SEO is search engine optimization, which is basically like the art of getting found on Google. So that could mean getting your Google business listing to show up. That could mean getting your website to show up down here. That's typically what's meant by SEO. And there's like a whole career just knowing how Google works, how to manipulate search ranks and all this stuff. We, like my team and I, we do SEO, but it's more from a like an organic or natural kind of approach. We do care about ranking, obviously, because we need our clients to be found, but it's not about ranking number one for a specific keyword. Like, we don't worry too much about that. We worry about phone calls coming in. And you could be on page 2 and get phone calls, the ranking doesn't directly correlate with the phone calls you're getting. And if somebody's getting enough phone calls, then who cares what they rank for a specific keyword? That's my thought process on it. If all we did was do SEO, then we would just care about keywords. But we take more of like a holistic approach. And at the core of it, like, the easiest way to approach this stuff is to think through this as your customers. Like, if a homeowner goes to Google and they're like, okay, I need a remodeler, they type in remodeler in their city, and they're looking through, like, what is their thought process? When I do searches like this, I go to Google Maps down here because I just assume all the ads are spammy. That's just how I've always been. I was using Google 15 years ago when there was a lot more spam, I guess. But if you look up here, there's three websites using Google ads here, and basically all three of them are Angie leads. You've got Angie at the top, you've got Powell & Sons in the middle, and you got Home Advisor on the bottom. Home Advisor and Angie leads are the same company. That's public. And if you fill out the form on Powell & Sons, you're going to get a call from somebody from Angie leads. This is just a company that gathers people's contact info and then sells it to the highest bidder, which is usually Angie leads these days. So all three of those are the same thing. So I automatically just skip down to Google Maps because I can look at reviews. I can click on this. I can read through their reviews. I can look at some of their photos. And by the time I read a few really good reviews, it's almost like word of mouth. Like, it's almost as good as having one of their friends tell them about you. But they read some of these reviews and they start to think like, okay, this company sounds good. They sound trustworthy. It's feeling less risky to proceed, whether that means calling or going to their website and checking it out. I'm not going to go to their website. I don't really know who that company is. So, like, if you can break this stuff down to the most fundamental level and just use your common sense, like how are people looking for your services? Where do they look? They look on Google. What is their thought process? If you understand all that, then you can start to put your marketing together in a way that makes it easy for them to go through that process with you. So yeah, let's see, another question. Not really a question, but there's been a bunch of people lately, leaving comments saying like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, or like, that stuff wasn't true. Angie's List worked for me. And I think it's important to address that because, look, Angie leads and buying leads works sometimes. If it didn't work at all, then those companies wouldn't be around. It definitely works sometimes, but there's a lot of people that it does not work for. And I think it's the majority of people don't have a very good experience with it. And there's dozens of reasons why that could be. Maybe it's too competitive in their area. Maybe they're not equipped to do the kind of sales that you need to do when you're buying those leads, because you need to call people like immediately, and you got to follow up with them nonstop in like the first few hours to even have a chance. Because if Angie Leads sells a lead to 5 people, 4 of those people are automatically going to lose. And so it's hyper competitive. And so maybe one of those 5 people has a good experience with Angie Leads because they have their sales dialed in or they have a sales team, but the other 4 people are unhappy with it. And that's why I'm just not a big fan of it. it's not really it's not really necessary for these companies to be spamming the front page of Google. You know, they've got all 3 ad spots on the top. Angie is here at the top, Porch, BuildZoom, Yelp. None of these are actual remodeling companies. So I type into Google, I'm looking for a remodeler in my city. And most of the things I find are companies trying to get in between and charge for the contact information. That's not necessary. If these companies weren't here, there would be more actual contractors showing up. And I think that's the way it ought to be. It's really not, it's not that expensive to just get your own website and do your own marketing, or, you know, have marketing done for you to the point where you can show up here on Google. And I would rather see contractors competing on this level than trying to compete racing to call these people that weren't really expecting a call from them, that are getting calls from multiple people. You know, it's just not a great situation in my opinion. But I never say that it never works. You know, it just doesn't work for most people. And I realized I wasn't sharing my screen here, but just to quickly to show, it's like we got 3 spots up here, all lead reselling companies. You got these 4 websites right here, they're lead companies, they're not contractors. And it's just kind of crazy that it's not super difficult to beat these guys on the Google playing field, because if you're a contractor that's actually in this city, then you are a lot more relevant than, you know, Better Business Bureau. You know, you're actually what the person typed in. And so if you set your stuff up right, like you can get yourself showing up here. If you show up here, you get a bunch of good reviews, like you're set. All right, let's see what other questions we got. Do I need to have an office to get a GMB? GMB is Google My Business. I work from home. So no, you don't have to have an office. You do have to have a physical address. So you can use your home address. You can't use a PO box. You can't use like a mailbox, like UPS store or whatever. It has to be like your own location, and that's just Google's rules. So you can use your home address. You go to google.com/business and fill out the stuff. They'll send you a postcard. You type in the code, you get verified, and that's all you have to do. And like I mentioned earlier, you can hide your address, and then nobody can even see where you're at. But you can be seen on Google, which is the most important thing. What should a small remodeling company focus on to grow in the long run? Should I focus on social media or SEO? So that's a good question. And I would say you need to focus on something. You know, like if you do social media religiously for the next 2 years, I would be shocked that if it did not bring in customers. If you did SEO for the next 2 years, whether you did it, you learned how to do it, or you paid somebody to do it, as long as you're getting what you pay for, you will get customers. The important thing is sticking with something for a long time. In the long run, marketing is like a snowball effect. You know, stage 1 is just having a professional website and having a Google listing and being able to even be found online. That's step 1. And then step 2 is gathering reviews, doing good work, taking pictures of your work, getting testimonials, just building up evidence that you do good work and putting that out there. And if you do that long enough, it starts to have like a feedback loop effect, or like a snowball effect, where, you know, once you get like 50 plus reviews, people look at your listing and they automatically just trust it more, because it's really hard to fake 50 reviews on Google. I know some people think it's super easy to fake reviews on Google. It really isn't. You have to have a Google account, and they are constantly looking for people that are trying to game the system. So should you focus on social media or SEO? It's kind of like the diet question. Which diet should you follow? Whichever one that you can follow for forever, right? Whichever one that you can stick with, that's the one you should do. So I've seen them both work. I personally like Google better because when people find you on Google, they're looking for your stuff. You know, nobody just goes to Google to browse anything. They're not browsing, they're looking for something specific. So when they type something into the search bar and you pop up and you are what they're looking for, it's very easy to get the sale or get them as a customer, as compared with social media where people are just browsing around and 99.999% of people are not going to be looking for what you're selling. And so you're really like just trying to get out in front of as many eyeballs as you can over and over and over and over again, so that this person who's seen you 100 times just so happens to want your services now and you're on top of their mind. So that's more how social media works. And ads is another thing, like advertising, because you can advertise on Google and you can advertise on social media. I guess that's kind of not really part of this question. So yeah, to sum that up again, whichever one you can stick with is the one that you should do. Here we go. Was that Ramon? What's up, Ramon? How much help is being on Yelp? That's a fun thing. How much help is being on Yelp? Is it better than social media or Google, or can it just be another tool? Yeah, it's just another tool in the toolbox, and nobody's finding you directly from Yelp. Usually they're going to type whatever they want in the Google, and then Yelp is going to have already done the SEO necessary to show up on the first page. Like, let's see, maybe if I do like interior designer, see if I can find a Yelp. Here we go. So if someone finds you on Yelp, it's because they typed it into Google and they found this page. And so it can help for sure. I have clients who get customers through Yelp. So you just want to be on here. If you're going to use stuff like Yelp, like this is a sponsored result, so that means somebody's paying to be up here at the top. But if you're going to use stuff like Yelp, it's just like the last answer I just gave. Like, you can't just start Yelp and then like not do anything, not fill out your profile completely, not upload photos, not get reviews. Like if you just have a Yelp profile that has no reviews and no pictures or anything, like it's not going to do anything for you. Like you have to invest time and energy into making it as attractive as you can and getting people to leave reviews there. And that's when it can start to become valuable. I would not recommend getting reviews on Yelp over Google. I think Google should be your main priority for getting reviews, because Google is right up here above Yelp. And you're much more likely to catch someone's attention up here than having them navigate all the way through Yelp and find you on there. So Google first, and then you can get people to leave reviews anywhere else you want. Another thing I don't really like about Yelp, and it's kind of true with Google too, is the sponsored thing. Like, let's see if they do it. I know like Angie's List and Home Advisor will do it, where they'll have, yeah, see, they have this kind of stuff. Someone's browsing your stuff, they're reading, and then down here at the bottom, they've got, here, you can't see it. They've got this, you might consider these companies. And so they're advertising other companies on your profile, which is kind of a bummer, because if they steer someone away from you, then that's too bad. Like, you attracted them, but then you lost them to someone else because someone else was paying. So with Google, it's not pay to play. It's free to have a Google listing, and 99% of the time there's nobody advertising up here. Once in a while you'll see a little ad and somebody will have paid to have their Google listing show up as a fourth one on top. So it's not like it never happens, but once someone clicks on you here, you know, they're not going to be bombarded with ads for other companies. Sweet. So we have like 2 people watching. Someday there will be like 20 and it'll be fun because more people will be typing stuff into the chat. Let's see what other questions we got. How many leads can someone expect in 3 months? That's like asking how long is it going to take to do my remodel? It's like, well, what kind of remodel is it? What are we doing here? You know, how long it takes or how many leads you'll get in 3 months depends on so many variables that I couldn't even answer you. It just depends on tons of stuff. So I can't really answer that. But I can say that, like, if you have a website and you already are on Google Maps and you're already getting some phone calls from it, then certainly applying proper SEO techniques and making your website better and optimizing your Google business listing, doing those things can have a very quick effect. Like Google's computers are watching this stuff all the time. You change something today, you can see an effect in a few hours. I remember one time I changed the name of, this was a long time ago, I changed like the name of my Google business listing, I think. And I'm not recommending you do this because it can be risky to just go around messing with your stuff like that. But I changed the name to include the city of Hayden. So Coeur d'Alene's down here, Hayden's up here by this lake. And I just wanted to see what would happen. And within a few hours, I was showing up on top of Google for searches related to Hayden. And so I've done tons of little tests like that over the years, but Google picks up on things really quickly. So if you have some kind of traction, some kind of momentum right now, you're getting some kind of calls or visitors or whatever, the changes that you make can have really fast effects. If you're starting from scratch and you don't have anything, you don't have a website, you don't have a Google business listing, then it's going to take some time. Like we'll launch a website and a Google listing and maybe start getting some calls like after about a month. And it will go up slowly. And then oftentimes, I used to say always, but now I say oftentimes, right after the 6-month mark, like you launch a website exactly 6 months later, we would see the numbers spike up. And Google isn't, I don't think, outright said it, but that's just because they have like a waiting period for new websites and before they'll like show you to a lot of people. And it makes sense because if you could just create a website and in 2 days show up here at the top of Google, imagine how inconsistent the search results would be. You know, you would have people for all sorts of reasons manipulating their way to the top super quick, and then they're gone in a week. You know what I mean? Like, it would be really unstable. And one of the reasons that people use Google is because it's so stable and it's so consistent. And so Google has to have safeguards in place to keep it consistent and stable. And one of those safeguards is making it so it takes a certain amount of time for a new website to start to pick up steam and get seen. And it's not like a hassle for them to do it. It's like, you know, a few lines of code on a computer. What's a basic rule for the amount of pictures and text one should have in one's website to not overload the potential client? Based on some research, people hate to read long pieces of text. Ramon, you're starting to sound like a marketer. Basic rule for amount of pictures. I would say use common sense. You know, how many words and pictures does somebody need to understand what you're trying to convey to them? With Google, it definitely helps to be thorough. You know, you want to talk about in text on your website. You want to talk about all of the different services that you want people to find you for. So if you are, you know, a handyman or a general contractor and you would like to get more customers that want you to build fences for them, then you need to have text content on your site about fences. If you want to do vinyl fences, you need to have vinyl fence content. Like, it's really common sense. If you don't have it on your website, people most likely aren't going to find you for it. So if you're wondering why you're not getting more bathroom remodel projects and your website does not mention bathroom remodels, that's probably why. So there's not like a blanket rule. You don't want to have too much, but I would err. I think what we do is we build the top part of the pages, or the part that people see most often. We build those for people. Like, we build them for people first. But sometimes we'll add more content below for Google. And, but it's always for people. Like, you got to remember that. You don't want to just put a bunch of text on there that when somebody reads it, they're like, what the heck is this? And some people will want to read a lot about it. Some people like to research the crap out of stuff before they even start to make a decision. So, as a contractor or as a professional, a service professional, if you're talking to people often, you'll be getting asked tons of questions. And I would say write those questions down and answer those to the best of your ability. And after you answer a question 100 times, you start to get pretty good at it. And then put that stuff on your website. Answer these questions beforehand. And that can be a lot of the content that you need for SEO, but it's also serving the purpose of answering common questions people have. So I would say that's my rule. Georgia Pro Wash, what's up? What is the best way to list different services in different settings on your GMB? Thank you for your work. Awesome, thanks, man. So the best way to list different services in different settings. What do you mean by different settings? Like, I'm a little confused by that. For services, you do have categories. So, like for a remodeler, for example, you could have kitchen remodeler, bathroom remodeler, general contractor, stuff like that. Landscapers could have landscape architecture, lawn mowing, landscaping, and every business typically has multiple categories. And so you should usually, like, a good rule of thumb is to include all the categories you want to be found for. It can sometimes be beneficial if you're like in a super competitive area to only use one category so that you can focus in 100% on it and beat your competition on just that one category in case it isn't possible to beat them aiming for multiple. It's kind of like the difference between a shotgun and a rifle. Like, if you're in a really competitive setting, marketing wise, you want to focus in like a rifle. If you're not in a competitive setting, like you're in a rural area and there's not much competition, at least online, then you can use the shotgun approach and probably be found by anybody. Honestly, our favorite people to work with are people in rural areas, which is counterintuitive because you would think you would want more population. But the fact is, if you're in a rural area and then you make a really awesome website and you have a really like professional looking company, you just have no competition. Everybody finds you for everything and they call you because there's no one else that looks even remotely close. Okay, different service areas. So what is the best way to list different services in different settings? So different service areas. My town is very rural. People do not want you to take care of their property. I didn't do research. I didn't do research when I became an LLC in this town. So is it people don't like the LLC in your name? You can probably just take that out. Different service areas. For rural areas, I don't really understand the question, but I'm going to just talk about what we do for rural areas. There's like one of our best case studies ever was this guy named Aaron Lundy. And this guy lives, in a pretty rural area, and we built this website, and he's in landscaping, and he does these, it's like 5 or 6 services: lawn care, landscaping, tree services, hardscaping, which is like pavers and that kind of stuff, spring and fall cleanup, and snow removal. So these are like the main things that people are looking for, the main categories of stuff people are looking for when they go to Google. And no one's really typing in hardscaping. Like that's a thing, that's something that landscapers say. Like homeowners don't say, oh, I need better hardscaping. At least I've never heard of one. But we have a lot of content on the site that breaks it down. So you'll notice up here we broke down all 6 of these services. And if you click on one, it takes you to a section that breaks the service down even more. So, okay, now we know hardscaping means patios, walkways, fire pits, retaining walls. And that, for people, that's helpful because maybe someone was looking for a fire pit and now they've found what they're looking for and they've confirmed that this company does what they want. But it's also helpful for Google because we just told Google hardscaping means these things. And so if anybody types these things into Google, Google's like, oh, this company does those things, and it calls them hardscaping. And we go even deeper than that. So we've got a whole page for hardscaping, and we break down these categories into even smaller categories. Retaining walls, pavers. We have a whole section for pavers, and so it's really just like breaking things down as thoroughly as you can on your website and using all these words that people are looking for, all these things, like all these services. So, you're in cleaning, pro wash. So, I don't know if you're doing like, what do you call it? Pressure washing and stuff like that. So, you could have some content and stuff about the different reasons and different things that people want pressure washed, and techniques for pressure washing, and how you don't want to pressure wash a asphalt shingle roof and why, and like all sorts of stuff like that. And it looked like you were having some issues. Your towns are very rural. People don't want you to take care of their property. So is it that there's nobody there that wants your services, or is there something about your company that's turning them off? Like the best thing to do is just to talk to them, talk to the people in your town. If I was struggling to find customers, I think I would just I'd go door to door and I'd just talk to people, and I would ask them questions. It's like, hey, are you ever interested in these kind of services? Why or why not? And just get the scoop from them. Make sure to give everybody your business card, even if they don't want to hire you. Because just going and talking to people like a real person and being nice and friendly is going to make people like you. And if people like you, they'll hire you or they'll recommend you. But more importantly, you'll hear from the horse's mouth why or why not your business is, or you're able to get customers around there, or you're able to sell whatever you're trying to sell. Maybe you'll find out that they want something else that you can offer, so you start selling that. If you can find something that people want and you can position it in a way that they want it, you're lucky to live in a rural area, because chances are nobody else in your area has done the groundwork that you did. And once you get established in a rural area, it's pretty cool. So just build out a landing page, the service, full curb appeal, exterior cleaning company, trash removal, yard cleanup. Yeah, like talk about all the things you do. Go talk to your customers or talk to people that could be your customers. Find out what they think, what they say, and put that stuff on your website. What is the number one concern of the people that hire you? That should be your headline. You know what I mean? Like, you're really building this for the people that need you. And if you do that right, like 90% of SEO and all that is done for you. Because Google's main priority is showing the best search results possible. So if you can be the best search results possible, game over. Like you can win. If you focus too heavy on trying to game the system and don't pay attention to the actual people you're trying to serve, then it'll be pretty trouble for you. just join your local chamber of commerce. Heck yeah, that's a good idea. Like get out and meet people, talk to people. Let them know who you are, let them know what you do. Be nice. It's hard not to get customers that way. How does one get moved up in the Google listing? Do heard business count for my trade. Okay. How do you get moved up on the Google listing? So I take it you're talking about Google Maps. That's this right here. And, oops, that's not right. How does one get moved up? For my trade in my town, the top ones have 30% negative comments. Well, if your competition is like mostly or 30% negative comments, then all you got to do is get in there and have 100% positive comments, and you should take it away. How you improve your rank up here is a little bit what's on your listing. Like you want this to be complete. You want the name of your company to be capitalized. You want proper grammar and punctuation throughout. You can go in and add your services in here. Like you basically go through your Google My Business dashboard and just fill out everything you can. And don't put a bunch of crap in there. Like write the stuff for your customers. Like pretend like you're writing this for your grandma. And if you do that, that will help. And then the rest of it is on your website. So like I showed you with Lundy's website, all of this information we have and how we break down the categories into smaller categories, and we cover all these different microservices that he offers, that makes it so when somebody types in something on Google, any one of those little microservices, he's popping up on Google Maps. So it's kind of, I guess, counterintuitive, but how well you show up on Google Maps is mostly determined by your website. And that's why websites are so important. If you could just show up in the top 3 up here without having a website, then that's probably what we would do, because it'd be a lot easier. But you can see all these other companies that are not showing up in the top 3. So if you're not in the top 3, you're kind of hurting. But don't be too discouraged if you're not all the time, because this is also based off of proximity. So if somebody's close to you, they're more likely to see you, in the top 3. And so they're more likely to find you. And that's why it can be helpful if you want to be found in the next town over. If you can get a location over there and get on Google Maps in that town or city too, then you have a lot more chances of getting seen. It's pretty awesome. Let's see what else we got. I need to get my Google My Business from the robots. You had 600 robots visit your website. That's weird. Yeah, like when you go to Google Analytics, here, I'll try to show you. So if you have a website and you're trying to do this kind of stuff yourself and you don't have Google Analytics, then you should go to YouTube, search for a video, and figure out how to install this, because you can see like where people are coming from, and that's super important. Like Google Organic, that is everybody below Google Maps. So anything down here, someone clicks on your website down there, that's going to show up in here as Google Organic. If they click on the Google Maps listing, let's see if I can expand this. Do I have any GMBs? Yeah, my company doesn't get found a lot on Google Maps because we work with people all over the country. But anyways, like if it came from Google Maps, it'd show up as GMB. Google CPC, that's Google Ads, YouTube. So you can see where everyone's coming from. And if you have like 600 bots visiting your site, what you can do is go up to, let's see, secondary dimension, and like type in city, And then at least you'll be able to see the people that are coming from your specific city. So then you can get an accurate count of how many real people are finding you. Because the bots are all going to be coming from like Ashburn or some other place where they have data centers. So, you know, if I lived in New York and I did this and it's like, okay, I had 78 people from New York find me. Now at least I have some data that means something to me, right? What else we got? This is awesome. Lots of action with you guys today. They don't want to or can't afford to pay for the cost of the convenience of taking care of their property for them, or washing their house. So, you know, if there's just no one in your area that wants to buy what you want to buy, then you either move or you start selling something different. Now, that's just the way it is. Hopefully you can figure it out. Like, I don't know where you are, how many people are there, but you know, if there's, you know, 10,000, 15,000 people, you should be able to find some people that'll hire you. It's also affordable to join chamber. You can also give things like pens. Yeah, like local networking is great. And if you show up, like, you can't just go like 2 times. You have to show up regularly, because, you know, depending on where you're at, if you're in a really rural town, there might not be that many people, so everybody knows each other really well. But even in big cities, like I lived in Portland for a while and I went to the chamber events here and there. And there's so many people that pop in for like 2 or 3 meetings and then never come around again. And everybody that's been going for a while knows that. And so when new people come, they kind of like don't pay attention to them. But after you've gone for a few months and people see that you're a regular, kind of like Google does with websites, they'll start to give you more attention, and they'll start to, you know, you'll probably get some customers from the chamber, but they'll recommend you, and it's like a big referral network. Everyone tries to help each other out. So my brother lives in the neighboring town. Can his town and mine both be on there? So yeah, you could put both towns on your website, and you can also get another Google listing at his house. And you don't have to show the house on Google. You don't have to show the address. But having another listing over there, that will give you even more opportunities to show up in Google Maps. You know, if like it's really, really hard for somebody in the next town over to see your Google listing, because Google's going to show them whoever's closest to them. So if you can be in multiple locations, hugely beneficial. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for showing up. I really appreciate the questions and the comments. Looks like we had like 15 or so people tune in, but I really appreciate you guys asking questions and stuff like that, because it gives us something to talk about, and you know, it gives me a chance to help you directly and for other people to learn from what you're going through. You know, at the end of the day, like, we're all going through the same stuff. You know, pretty much every local service business is the same except for the actual service that you do. So when it comes to marketing and billing and all that kind of stuff, like, it's all the same stuff. So we can all learn from each other, and I just really appreciate you being here. So with all that said, thanks for tuning in. I post tons of these kind of videos and stuff on my channel, so if you're not subscribed, subscribe, and we'll probably do another one of these live calls in like a week or so. So have a good rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you on the next one.